smallholders themselves had understood and acted upon the need to organize and network up to the regional, the continental, and the global level. In Africa, farmers' organizations organized to make input into CADEP when it was being formulated. It was the exercise around which the regional networks came together, from which PAFO would subsequently emerge. And this document, published in 2004, in which the farmers' organizations gave their vision and recommendations on what a CADEP should look like, is still a very valid document and merits rereading. Smallholders globally were rediscovered in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis. But initially, the dominant vision had to do with how many there were of them and how vulnerable they were, rather than their important contribution to food production and security. The World Development Report in 2008 adhered to the modernization paradigm that Yan Dao has recalled to us. The Common Framework for Action, published by the United Nations Secretary General's High-Level Task Force on Global Food and Nutrition Security in the same year, 2008, was less rigid in its outlook, but still considered that most production would come from larger farms. In passing, let me pay tribute to the EU policy framework for food security, again in the aftermath of the food price crisis, published in 2010, which in my view is beyond any doubt the best public policy to come out of the food price crisis, attentive to smallholder realities, respectful of human rights framework. We know that this policy framework is about to be redefined, revised, and civil society organizations are very interested in working with the Commission to make sure that the new version keeps on board all of the excellent qualities of the 2010 version. The international community as a whole, of course, had to react to the food price crisis, and it had three options on its on the table. The high-level task force was looking for better coordination, which of course is always important, but a purely administrative measure, not involving member states in any way. The G8 Global Partnership was calling for more investment in agriculture. Again, important, but with no attention to what kind of investment in what kind of agriculture. The only proposal that was looking to find policy responses to what were clearly not simply technical or financial issues was the proposal to reform the existing but dormant UN Committee on World Food Security to make it an authoritative and effective world forum for food security. This was, surprisingly enough, the option that won out in the end, thanks also to support from smallholder organizations, the Food Sovereignty Movement, and others, including the European Union. And the reform took place during 2009. It was an exceptionally inclusive process. Smallholder organizations and other actors were involved in helping to define the characteristics of the reformed committee. I've put some of the most important ones up here on this slide. It is recognized as being the foremost inclusive global forum promoting policy convergence and coherence, human rights-based, civil society actors with those most affected by food insecurity, so smallholder producers and others, are full participants in the debate and in the year-round process and are entitled to form their autonomous mechanism to interact with the intergovernmental process. There is inclusive and transparent decision-making by governments, unlike in the multi-stakeholder platforms that are currently all of the rage, in which all actors are welcomed into the room on the same footing, disregarding roles, responsibilities, interests, power imbalances, with the result that powerful economic actors often lead the way and government policy space is annulled. The CFS calls on the high-level panel of experts to provide an evidence base for its policies, and it aspires to build links between global policies and local realities. So in this favorable context, we've seen since 2010 the emergence of what you could call a smallholder narrative incorporating testimony that smallholders themselves bring into the room. This slide is actually a real-life photograph of a moment of the debate that took place on investing in smallholder agriculture. And as you can see, the authoritative testimony by leaders of small-scale producers' organizations is a very powerful antidote to the recipes prescribed for them by others. This is a quote from the 2013 high-level panel of experts report to which Yan Dao referred, which makes the very important point that the future of smallholder agriculture is an outcome of political choice, explicit or implicit, and not destiny, and that different models of agriculture require different sets of policy and program support. The recommendations to governments, and you'll find the website where you can download them on this slide, the recommendations to governments are to inclusively develop explicit country-owned visions of the future of smallholder agriculture and to bring them to bear holistically, systemically on a range of relevant policies and budgets, which are detailed in these recommendations. Essentially, prioritizing public policies and investments that support and defend smallholder investments in agroecological production models and the markets that benefit them. But which markets are these? This was the subject of negotiations that took place in the CFS in 2015, 2016, which led to an acknowledgement that most of the food consumed in the world reaches consumers not through formal value chains and supermarkets, but through a multitude of territorial markets rooted in local, national, and regional food systems. Some of the characteristics, as outlined in the recommendations, are that they're inclusive, offering in particular more opportunities for women. They perform multiple functions, including contributing to nutritious diets. They're most remunerative for smallholders because they offer them more control over their conditions of access and prices as compared, for example, to contract farming. They make it possible to retain and redistribute value added within the territorial economy, and yet relatively little is known about them because they're often overlooked in data collection systems, which, and I quote from the adopted recommendations, impacts negatively on the evidence base for informing public policies. We'll be hearing more about this from Mamadou Goita in the second panel. A third set of CFS recommendations, very important for smallholders, regards livestock and pastoralism, which is an often neglected sector of the smallholder constituency. And these recommendations legitimate the contribution that they make to the sustainable use of ecosystems and to food security and nutrition. So, in short, the reform Committee on Food Security in 10 years is the interest of outsiders as the investment of smallholders themselves. Inadequate or inexistent provisions for participation of those most affected. To use Leonard's term, the right conditions aren't there. Yet, there are some significant examples of cases where smallholder government dialogue is taking place with good results. The onion example in Senegal that Yan Dao referred to. In Burkina Faso, the government has called to privilege local products for institutional procurement. In land tenure, the application of the tenure guidelines adopted by the CFS with a very broad collaboration among different actors, supporting this effort. At the regional level, we can cite just one example, ECOWAS, and its interaction with ROPA and other civil society networks in West Africa on important issues like mechanisms for financing smallholder agriculture, drawing on the CFS recommendations and on the very cogent studies and proposals made by the smallholder organizations themselves. At the global level, the assessment of the smallholder recommendations is underlining once again the importance of policy coherence across global forums. The Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women adopted in 2016 important recommendations on the rights of rural women. We saw at the end of last year in the General Assembly the adoption of the UN Declaration on Peasants' Rights. FAO technical committees, like the Committee on Fisheries, are working on important issues like voluntary guidelines on artisanal fisheries. The International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture has the important dossier of farmers' rights to seeds on its table. The UN Decade for Family Farming that we'll be hearing more about from Roberto Ridolfi. But coherence is very, very far from total. It's sufficient to think about the impacts of WTO and bilateral trade and investment agreements on smallholder agriculture. And there's the issue of policy incoherence within regional organizations themselves. The EU, the African Union, addressing these is fundamental. And finally, the SDGs. It is becoming increasingly clear that we are not on target to meet them. We need to change direction. More of the same is not enough. In fact, it is counterproductive. With regard to SDG 2, to be slightly provocative, we have a choice between listening to smallholders in intergovernmental forums, as in the Committee on World Food Security, or going for promises of financial contributions by World Economic Forum corporations, obviously on their terms. What else would they try for? There's a strong feeling on the part of civil society organizations who are deeply interested in food security, food sovereignty, democratic governance, that multilateralism and public policy space is in danger today. And we feel that it has never been as important as it is today to defend smallholder participation on the same kind of terms as we find in the Committee on World Food Security. And let's recall that this was not a gift by anything. The CFS is a situation that smallholder organizations fought for and are fighting to defend, and we count on the EU, the African Union, to contribute to this, because it is by far the most effective way of bringing about the right conditions for smallholder agriculture, with special attention to those most affected, and decision-making and responsibility and accountability of governments safeguarded. The Africa-EU partnership is an excellent terrain on which to build the process and the substance of listening to smallholders, and civil society organizations are only too happy to work with the regional authorities on this important task. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nora, for that expert articulation of the governance issues affecting the smallholder sector. May I call upon our very own Elizabeth Antangana? Elizabeth Tamadala. We have this interesting thing in PAFO where the first woman president of PAFO went by the name Elizabeth, and the current one is also going by the same name. So there's always a bit of confusion about the surnames. Apologies for that. No need to do the introductions. They've been done already, and the CV is also in our packs. Elizabeth, all yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sunga. Sitting here with a voice of over 70 national farmers organization representing 80 million smallholder farmers from 49 countries and the 5 regional farmers organizations in one continental platform, the Pan-Africa Farmers Organization, really gives me a big shoe to speak about the challenges faced by farmers and farmers organizations in Africa, and especially focusing on the issues of youth who are currently constituting over 60% of the continent's population. And out of this, we understand that 41% is less than the age of 15 years. And by 2030, the population, the contribution of Africa's youth population to the global population will be more than 42%. I want to take this opportunity to recognize my fellow colleagues in the House from the Pan-Africa Farmers Organization member networks. I think you can stand up for recognition or just wave to the audience. Because these are the people that are making things happen at the continent. Farmers and representatives of farmers in the House. You can just wave to there. Okay. So again, I would like to appreciate CTA for really taking the initiative to support farmers organizations in Africa, especially making sure that we bring our voice in the Brussels briefings. I know today we are holding the 57th one, but we've participated in more than 50%, in more than 50 Brussels briefings. Meaning our voice has always been in Brussels, in the table of policy making in this Brussels center of policy making. And to SCP and EU, I really want to appreciate your support, especially the financial support, under the Strengthening of Farmers in Africa program that brought together this big federation of the farmers in the continent, and with the new support under the Farmers for SCP. So thank you so much, and please continue giving us the support. So when we speak about Africa's agriculture, what really comes into our mind as people who are in this house and everyone who is out there? Of course, we all understand the challenges that are faced by the African farmer, and I would not want to really to dwell more into that. But looking at Africa's agriculture, we all understand that it is the backbone of Africa, and more than 70% of the population are employed in this sector. But it is characterized by high labor intensity because of low levels of mechanization. We have poor production technologies. Farmers are still using uncertified seed. We have less fertilizer usage in some instances. We have less than 2 kilogram usage per hectare in most of our countries. We are still dependent on nature. Most of our farmers are still depending on rain-fed agriculture. We have limited research, and in most cases where this research is done, it is always shelved and doesn't reach the farmers. The extension is alarming. In some countries, we have a ratio of 1 extension worker to 1,800 households. The low levels of variation, the poor post-harvest management and storage facilities, the unstructured markets that are highly volatile, with, of course, different prices. The weak regulatory environment that has already been alluded to by most of the speakers. The sector is mainly characterized by the elderly, who own, of course, the land in Africa. We are aware that the youth in Africa don't own land, and so much of the land is owned by this aging population. And of course, we lack mentors and the role models. And most of these people who should be mentoring the youth into the agriculture sector have been employed in the public sector for more than 30 years. They have generated enough capital. But surprisingly, they don't have even an agribusiness of investment of less than $100. But they are proud to say that the agribusinesses of the youth does not live to celebrate the second birthday. I don't know whether you're getting the message. And our governments are also very comfortable trooping to China to look for debt instead of exploiting the hidden potential of the agriculture sector, because the future of the continent is in agriculture, and it is only Africa that has a potential of feeding the world. So what should be done? We want to see formal and informal skills development through capacity building in agribusinesses, in the value addition, of course, among other things. We need to see decentralization of incubation services, and these facilities should be decentralized to the local levels. We need to see a lot of coaching, the mentorship, the hands-on skills training being given to the youth. We need to have improved access to finance. Not only access to finance, but this finance should be branded. It should be accessible. It should be affordable to the youth. We need to embrace and scale working agri-techs. I know there are a lot of technologies. Just a few days ago, CTA launched the Digitization of Africa report, which has so many technologies that have been profiled on the continent. But it's not a matter of just, having these technologies in place and they cannot live to celebrate their second birthdays. We need to see how to scale up some of these working models and scale them to be able to, to promote the agriculture sector on the continent. We need to have these youth organized into farmers' organizations and cooperatives. Majority of the youth are still working individually, and that is why their power, their voices are not heard. But we need to see how to closely work together, make sure most of these youth are organized into farmers' organizations, into cooperatives, so that they can have a strong voice to influence policy and investments with the different actors in the agriculture sector. And so what are we doing as the Pan-Africa Farmers Organization? Of course, through our member organizations, the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, PROPAC from Central Africa, ROPA, and SACAO. We also have a North African one, UMAGRI, but of course it has not been supported under this arrangement because it is not an AU. It is not an EU ACP regional farm organization. So in terms of what we've done as a continental farm organization, our focus has been on leadership and making sure that we leverage the ground and level it to make sure that it offers opportunities to everyone democratically. And it's the reason we have the first youth and female president speaking to you. We have also, in terms of employment at regional farmers organizations, our secretariat has youthful employees who interact and prepare farmer leaders to engage in policy, in advocacy, in investments, in partnership decision makings, and all these have transferred a lot of knowledge and experience to the young generation. We have also, through, of course, our partners like CTA and with the support of EU funds and ACP funds, we've organized exposure and exchanges with most of these partners to expose our youth to some of these working models, of course, abroad and regionally, to both the private sector and the development sectors as one way of, capacity building. We have also working established regional platforms for youth entrepreneurs to facilitate business-to-business interaction and advocacy. And we know SACAO, PROPAC, and ROPA has really performed very well in having these platforms up and running. In terms of providing skills to our young farmers, we have focused on developing the different value chains. And ROPA, our West African organization, has done this pretty well in Mali, in the area of fisheries, and Benin in cashew nut sector. And through digitalization, initiatives like eGranary in the Eastern Africa, we have built an ecosystem of partners that provide supply contracts, affordable credit and insurance, mechanization services and extension. The system aggregates the farmers to markets and it offers bundled services. On this system, we have been able to reach 40% of our youth out of the over 200,000 smallholder farmers that the system is servicing. And through direct business training, mentorship and partnerships, again through the Eastern Africa Farmers Federation, with support from IFAD, we've been able to mobilize more than 8,000 youth. We've profiled them, we've profiled and packaged existing opportunities within the region in East Africa, and we've made different contacts. We have also worked with experts to train them to develop business-ready plans, and we are linking them to potential investors in Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania, and we are also using mentors to make sure that they get better business skills so that they can be able to pitch to potential investors. And so, coming to an end, what are the key messages that I need to put across? We have to invest in young people and systems if we are to have sustainable food systems. We need to understand that the youth don't need handouts. That talk is history. We no longer need handouts. We need to be handheld to contribute to sustainable food systems. And lastly, agriculture is the future of Africa. We need actions to match the transformation and the future that we want. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that presentation. May I now have the honor to introduce Mr. Roberto Ridolfi. You will see the bio in the pack, but as he goes to set up his presentation, let me just read through quickly. He's the Assistant Director General for Program Support and Technical Cooperation at FAO. Currently holds that position, but has been before an advisor to the Deputy Director General Program of Strategy, Financing, Development, which he held 2018. And before that, he's also worked with the European Commission. Many of us who know him from his previous roles in the European Commission. Mr. Rodolphe, without further ado, may I invite you to make your presentation? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, buongiorno. Sorry for being late, but I read the summary in real time of what my friends and colleagues have said here, which is largely coincident with what FAO, by launching the Decade of Family Farming, did in May, last May in Rome. I'm very happy to be here in Brussels to see so many friendly friends, and I would like to thank the colleagues of FAO in Brussels for being with me here. But I was late because there are a lot of meetings that we need to do in these days in Brussels in order to get the ball rolling for agriculture and agribusiness related to the food system to become the cornerstone of Leonard is the new partnership minister, commissioner from Finland. I hope that we have to support Leonard meets here because he's our, he's our white knight in getting the commissioner, the new commissioner from Finland, to understand that family farming is indispensable for sustainability in 2030. I will start from this small. I would like to thank my colleagues of FAO that have prepared a beautiful presentation, but as I usually do, I will deviate from it. You will forgive me, but the most important point that we say in many international fora is who is the economic actor in the planet more closely linked to the planet, to the land, to the water, to the forests, to to the rivers, to the fisheries in the fish in the sea, than the family farmer or the family fisherman or the family livestock holders. Nobody. This is the economic actor that is with his family, with her family, because the majority are women, by the way, that are linked to the planet. They live out of the sustainability that they are able to generate. Because if they generate unsustainability around themselves, they will suffer from that in the farm. It's not like us generating insustainability 2,000 kilometers away from where we live. They live where they work, where they have to maintain the sustainability of their ecosystem in order to survive. So, the argument goes like this. Family farmers, and I repeat, fishermen, forestry, etc., 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 are those, the guardian of sustainability in a way. I wouldn't trust a big multinational to spearhead sustainability. Of course, they will do, and I come to that in a second. In the food system, it's indispensable that consumers tell distributors who tell companies of food system who tell farmers that they want sustainability, right? You see this kind. Consumers, especially in mature market, they will ask for that. But at the end of the day, it's the farmer, I repeat, fisherman, etc., that is holding the fortress of doing it. And I like the intervention that was said. Europe is a continent of family farmers. My grandfather was a farmer. I think that and this is linked to traditions, culture. And culture is linked to education, and education is linked to lifestyle. And lifestyle goes back to the environment. You see how close we are in talking about these heroes, family farmers, into the sustainability. I believe in that. I think the European Union has always believed in that. And the FIO is spearheading this kind of message. You must remember last year there was a big symposium on agroecology. You remember that? CTA has contributed to the research. Technology and innovation is fundamental because the youth will never go to do family farming without. They will not find it appealing. I would dare to say sexy. They don't find it interesting enough. So the brains are moving to cities. Forget about the migration to Europe. This is a fake news. Think about the migration to the cities, which impoverish the countryside of brain, impoverish of ideas, impoverish of enthusiasm. So the decade of family farming goes back to that fundamental assumption. Do we need or not the youth to be in the countryside? The youth motivated. And motivated by what? What is motivating the majority of us here is a good life. Living good, living well. And that is where I think the decade of family farming has to do this connection between lifestyle, perspective of a better future, sustainability, and a fair economic job, which is farming. Let's not look at farming as a damnation, fighting against drought, fighting against climate change, fighting against land tenure, fighting against pests, fighting against a new kind of diseases, transboundary in animal boundary or in farming. Let's think at farming like a gentleman in Bordeaux region producing red wine and selling it at $25 a bottle. That is also farming, isn't it? So let's have a positive attitude to that. And of course, we need economies of scale. We need to link up to the market. I think you said it all. I get the interventions from previous speakers. You get the innovation to plug in, which is probably the most fundamental aspect. because innovation triggers the young people triggers energy, enthusiasm, and investments. So the family farming decade gives us this opportunity. By the way, we have launched the decade, it was declared in New York, launched in Rome in May, and then regionals. Caribbeans and Latin America, they have done it 2 weeks ago in Santo Domingo, I think. We need to do it in Africa. And I'm personally very, very willing to come and do the thing. We need to do it in the Pacific. We need to do it in North America. We need to do it in Europe. A launch for the family farmers in Europe. And this is basically up to farmers of organizations to promote and launch. And of course, the organization, CTA, the EU, the FIO, the big universities, we are all involved in the elaboration, but the engine is the farmer themselves. And the farmers are organized by farmers' organizations. Yeah, that's what I said. We did that in Dominican Republic in August. I hope we can do launches in other regions as soon as possible. Now, what we have, the Committee on Food Security will convene next month, 1 week in Rome, around the World Food Day, and it will be a big day. You know, we have a new Director General in FIO, is an acute professor of innovation and technology applied to agriculture. So I think this is a good news. I'm sure and certain it will give a push to the agenda of innovation and youth. And this is good news again. We need really to percolate at country level, because the business then is done in each country is different. We have different cultures. We have different attitude. But we have some tools. You see here a list, the voluntary guidelines to support the progressive realization of the right to adequate food. The right to adequate food is a universal human right, inserted in the Declaration of Human Rights. Can we all say confidently that this is guaranteed everywhere? I'm sure in a number of cheap, trash, fast food in our town in Europe, this is not guaranteed. That's not good food. But voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forest. The EU was a big supporter, together with Switzerland, Netherlands, France, Italy, of the work on that. For me, this is the first building block of what we can call SDG compliance. SDG is complicated matter. You know how many SDGs? 17. You know how many targets? 169. You know how many indicators? No, you don't, because the number is variable. You know, it's 241, but could be 242. We don't know yet. We are still defining them. The science is complicated. You know, one of the indicators is called sustainable agriculture. Can anybody here explain me what it is? No, nobody can. Because if FIO cannot do it, nobody can do it. I am sure and certain. What I mean is that the science behind sustainability is complex. It's up to us. In FIO, we are trying very hard. The CTA, I call upon you. The EU, I call upon you. It's up to us to transform this scientific complexity of sustainability in practical business tools that farmers can use it without clogging into unnecessary complication. If you ask a small farmer to do all the compliance for sustainability, he will close the shop tomorrow morning, right? So we need to transform that complexity in something that is business friendly, that can be done, still going in the right direction of sustainability. This is an important task. Otherwise, we shall not talk about private sector, because the private sector will say, hey, give me something simple that will not undermine my competitiveness in the economic place. So I want to these voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests is one building block. I can tell you with no hesitation that if everybody would apply these guidelines, we would have no land grabbing in the planet today. But since somebody does not apply these guidelines, we do have land grabbing still. The voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries, the same, is an SDG tool. It's an SDG tool. We have this UN Decade of Family Farming Global Action Plan organized in 7 pillars. I don't want to bother you with the details, but this is the way that has been conceived, negotiated, dealt with, and finally approved. 1, develop an enabling policy environment to strengthen family farming. What does it mean? Access to finance and access to innovation. And who can do that? Farmers' organization. I would like to call the GFAR chapter here. You know that EU was instrumental to set up this global forum for agricultural research. It's not a forum to elaborate research. That is a forum for partnership, a forum for extension services at global scale. Number 2, support youth and ensure the generational sustainability of family farming. We say that. I think, Michael, you said in your intervention, Leonard as well, Madam Elizabeth, the young people, they need to be attracted by that. Otherwise, they become lawyers and they go to London or to New York. And they earn in one day what they would have earned in 3 years in their place. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to London or New York, but the fact that there are tools today, for example, e-commerce. Wouldn't you agree with me that e-commerce can shorten that value chain passages that today are so penalizing the farmers in the price, in the value of what they do? E-commerce, I produce what that market wants, and my thing goes shipped to that place. Okay, we have to consider the carbon footprint of that, but I think it's a good approach to see higher value at the farming gate. So youth will look into that, I'm sure. 3, gender. There was a slide where we see that, more than 50% of these smallholder farmers are women. And my experience in many countries, I lived 20 years outside Brussels. I am a Brussels bureaucrat. Now I am a Rome bureaucrat, but I lived all my life outside. And I can tell you that the experience of women in cooperative, the experience of women in sharing and in consolidating is much stronger than the one of men, with all excuse to the boys present in the room. Pillar 4, family farmers organizations. We say that. We have to strengthen. So I hope that GFAR can start now quick and take back the reign of this kind of work. Pillar 5, improve the socio-economic inclusion, resilience, and well-being of family farmers. Pillar 5 is not simple. It's complicated. Because what does it mean? Shall we give subsidies? You know, we have some experiences, for example, in some very poor provinces and counties in China, where they actually give cash. They give cash. Safety net, what we call safety net, in areas where boosting production is impossible or access to market is extremely difficult. Safety nets. We do need to consider a combination of social, economic, and also political measures to be taken on this. But the resilience is key. In front of climate change, the key word is resilience, resilience, resilience. You know, as I was born engineer, and resilience is the measure of when you break under stress. That's resilience. Now, we don't want to test that to the far end of its purpose. So we need to build a sort of buffer zone, not to go to the limit. Number 6, sustainability of family farming for climate resilient food systems. I think is redundant in the sense that we have said that sustainability is the key for the future. In FAO, we have developed e-learning. I would really strongly recommend all of you and our local office here can distribute the list of e-learning. These are training of half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours on sustainability. We have some 150 small modules because education is fundamental. Small modules. Well, we had a meeting with Carrefour. You know Carrefour, people selling food, distributors. They are interested for FIO to help them to infuse sustainability in their operations. Fantastic. Why? Because if consumers ask more sustainability, the productive system will have to deliver it. And that's it. That's the key. SDG equal good for business. If we reach that, then we will reach SDG. If SDG is perceived as a surplus cost of my operation, then it's difficult. I think it is a proposition that we have to consider and, of course, discuss with all different perceptions. Number 7, strengthen the multidimensionality of family farming to promote social innovation for territorial development and food systems that safeguard biodiversity, environment, and culture. When we look at the GIAS is the sort of landmarks that are protected because of their, it's a mix of culture, aesthetic, and lifestyle that makes the beautiful places in the world as beautiful as they are. There are many, many different places in Latin America, Africa, China, Japan, Europe, North America that are classified as GIAS, a sort of heritage for humanity in terms of agricultural making. Well, that is the place where agroecology is more possible. That is the place where sustainability is more possible. But if money, if investments doesn't go in those places, they will soon disappear. They will be crushed in the system. I go to the conclusion, and I will conclude here with the prospects for the smallholder family farmers. I want to be honest with you, from our socioeconomic analysis, the prospects are not so good. So we have to improve the prospects. They do have a key role in diets. We don't talk anymore of healthy food. We talk of healthy diets, and healthy diets have to do with a lifestyle. We talk about the creation and promotion of new markets tailored to family farmers' needs. How about e-commerce? Can we play with e-commerce there? I think so. I know of experiences of urban farming in Milan, very, very successful. Small scale, but highly specialized. And of course, you need technology. By the way, family farming is not always small. We must say that we have big family farming in the US, in the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, in Italy. But in this case, the smallholder family farmers, who are the majority, are the subject of our interest. Strengthening the capacity of family farmers organization, which is one of the pillars. Dialogue with different private sector is essential because in the value chain, private sector could be Amazon, or Alibaba operating the e-commerce. Why? Because they have to plug into that kind of sustainability that we are talking about. It's crucial to empower family farmers, particularly women, youth, and their organization. Now, empowering is a difficult business. Leonard Mitzi knows that the most difficult thing is good governance in farmers' organizations. I want to be honest with you. Good governance means proper keeping of accounts, proper keeping of rules, proper allowing everybody to exert their rights and duties. And this is the most difficult part, because these are highly decentralized entities. Last, SMEs. SMEs in the value chain. When you think to a country and you look at any mature country economic situation, you see an ecosystem of different actors of different size. You have the micro, you have the small, you have the medium, and you have the big. The ecosystem must be filled by different size of business players in the economic space. Then you create an economy which is mature. An economy only based on micro enterprises will be very short to run. So SMEs, in this sense, are the immediate partner of smallholders, family farmers, and they have to work together within the chapter of sustainability. Thank you very much. I hope that you were interested to my speech, and I'm available to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ridolfi, for that usual passionate presentation. We have a challenge here. We have only 15 minutes, 15 minutes for discussions, and it's quite a challenge given the richness of and variety of the presentation so far. Can I invite people to be very concise in their questions or remarks, starting first with your name and the organization, and making your questions very short, please.
You have to sit here for the micro, please.
We start with the gentleman nearest to me of the two. And I'll select four before you respond. I may need to stand. I'll also ask him to speak number two. Number three will be, which country is that?
Private sector.
The private sector. And then number four will be Marek. Let's see how far we go with these four. Very short and sweet. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to the speakers. I come from Togo, and I come from the agricultural producer and farmers organizations in Togo. I would like to have some more explanations from Nora in particular. Can you say a little bit more about the role of pastoralism?
Two.
Yes, Valérie Sumo, Prana Sustainable Water. We have a tool that is correlating the trade finance. So, for example, for commodities who are traded today, but for deliveries in 1, 2, 3, 5 years ahead of production, with the infrastructure finance for the what we call the biorefinery, so wastewater transformation plants, providing fertilizers that are much more cheaper than the classical mineral fertilizers, biogas, clean water, etc. And I'm just wondering if the European Commission is providing a policy or a tool for correlating also massively the trade finance with the infrastructure finance for agriculture mainly.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, right. Well, thank you. I'm from Learning Academy Worldwide. It's a Swedish-based nonprofit that works within youth development in South Africa with a focus on agriculture. One of my questions, and this issue of the right conditions is so crucial, but I want to know, right conditions for who? Is there a dialogue about the clarity required on who determines or defines the right conditions, number one. Secondly, is there a dialogue about the sort of assimilation of integration of research institutes, universities, and entities in relation to the needs of the small farmer?
Thank you, Marek.
Oui, bonjour, Marek Poznanski du collectif Stratégie.
I come from the Food Strategy Collective, and we work together with some of the organisations present here today. I had a question. Mr. van der Ploeg said quite clearly that most farmers are still poor, but the idea is to make these, to allow these farmers to develop and become wealthier so that they have more resources, more means to fight against poverty to start with, and then to progress, to develop further. But in order for that to happen, you have to take into account their circumstances. You need good policies which allow these farmers, and these farmers find themselves in a difficult situation. We need to find a way of allowing them to evolve, to progress. Mr. Ridolfi said several times that we need to have measures to help family farming. What was your starting point? Was your starting point the conditions in which poor farmers find themselves? Was that your starting point? And if that's the case, what measures can be adopted to help them? There may be other measures as well. Farming is quite a diverse sector. So how could you focus on those farmers? And some of the solutions you came forward didn't seem to be entirely well tailored to the situation.
Well, thank you for those questions, and I'm hoping that the panelists are going to be also short and precise in responding to them. Let's start with questions directed at Nora, and we go right round.
Thank you. I invite the person who addressed this question to me to download and read. Je vais parler en français puisque vous.
I'll say that in French, because you asked the question in French. Could I encourage you to look at the recommendations? You'll find the web link in the slides. I gather those slides have been circulated. I want to spare you the detail here and now. But as I said, pastoralism and pastoral systems, pastoralists are often forgotten. When you talk about small producers, you think about farmers. Mr. Ridolfi read out the list of other forms of producers, and pastoralists tend to be forgotten. And they have been particularly affected by the concept of modernization described by Mr. van der Ploeg. I mean, we said that the smallholders are destined to fail, but that applies even more to pastoralists. I mean, pastoralists, it's all a question of settling as well. So there are recommendations adopted in the context of the UN, adopted by all your governments, and those recommendations say that pastoralism is often the best way of managing certain types of ecosystem. I mean, mobility and modernization is very important, and governments need to understand that so that the necessary conditions are put into place to reflect the complexity of these systems. So perhaps I could encourage you to read those recommendations for more detail.
Thank you. I suppose the question on trade financing could be directed to Mr. Mizi.
Thank you. Two questions. First of all, right conditions. Clearly, what we are trying to do with the support to farmers' organizations, even Nora mentioned the EU Africa platform, is to create and embed in the continental free trade area a real platform of multi-stakeholders to actually engage in policy making. Now, normally this exists in CADEP. The question is, has CADEP, and we support as well a lot CADEP, and there is a CADEP partners program and donors program, has CADEP delivered in the real policy dialogue? Because normally in a CADEP process, there are farmers' organizations, there are small farm holders in dialogue, but we still have the majority of African countries which are not investing in agriculture. So there is a disconnect in this dialogue between the right conditions, and when we speak about the right conditions, is the right conditions to attract interest, investment, youth, empowerment in agriculture and food systems. Otherwise, the dialogue will become lip service. We have a dialogue with governments. We have budget support, which actually has a number of indicators which trigger financing when things go right, and when they are not right, we stop financing. But in general, policy dialogue has to be multi-stakeholder and across the value chain. Clearly, as Roberto said, e-commerce can bypass a bit the dimension of dialogue, but you still need a dimension of policy dialogue, because we know that the large majority of markets remain of a local and sub-regional nature. So we need to support the dialogue, and we will continue supporting that dialogue and empowering leaders and farmers' organizations to be in that dialogue, because you can't have good policies. The ideas are there. We can track a lot of ideas out there on what's working, what's not, between agroecology, agroforestry, research. But when we find at some countries, some are working well, and it's the usual 10, 15 countries, but on pastoralists, the question is there a regional debate, a continental debate, which actually implements that pastoralism strategy from a holistic way between ECOWAS, COMESA, AYAC, or, for example, the continental free trade area? Because pastoralists move, there are big challenges which are cross-border, which require cross-border solutions, not just country solutions. On trade finance and infrastructure, clearly, beyond the external investment plan that we are working on and we are rolling out, and the framework conditions, as you know, 3 pillars, including the discussions around the right framework conditions and technical assistance, clearly a priority is to create that infrastructure, both soft and hard infrastructure, at country level and at regional level. And what I will invite the person who has asked the question is to contact our delegations at country level, because it's there where the infrastructure package is created. What we do in headquarters is to try as much as possible, where budget support is, to trigger, to nudge the governments where things are not working well in terms of either hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure. It's clear that rural infrastructure has a key role to play. We can't speak about creating intra-regional trade in Africa without roads, without the necessary hubs, including digital hubs and fiber optic cables, if we really want to upscale connectivity in Africa.
Mr. Rodolphe, you want to respond to Marek's question?
Yes, thank you. No, in fact, I didn't propose any measure. For me, we have to work. Your question, if I'm not wrong, is what could be the measures to support poor family farmers? And I have to add the poor family fishermen and foresters and so forth. Four pillars for this in our experience. First of all, education, so training, education. Secondly, inputs and innovative inputs, which is not only seeds and fertilizer, but is much more than that, is technological inputs, is innovative approaches to commerce. 3, finance, access to finance, access to the right finance, because there is the wrong finance and the right finance. Quickly, wrong finance is the one asking you guarantees and charging you a lot of money for the money they give you, right? This is impossible finance. Let's not say right or wrong. Let's say possible or impossible. Poor farmer with no collateral, he has in front of him or her a question, possible or impossible? And very, very often is impossible. So there are countries where the land lease can be used as a collateral for loans. Fantastic. This is policy. This is government. There are countries where the lease of the land cannot be used as a collateral. Policy, governments. And last, access to markets. I only propose e-commerce because it's striking me how there are experiences that are working on that. But it's not the only solution, by the way. As Leonard said, the dialogue by the stakeholders with the government is fundamental to keep that on life. And on one point that I think was asked, how can we ensure the assimilation of the results of the research? Well, I've been in the Fund Council of the CGIAR for so many years, and a number of scientists, they detested me when I stopped funding that circuit for the reason that the research is good for a development actor only if it's delivered to the farmer. If he ends up only in a book, in a shelf, it's not good. So we need to reinforce that passage, and I strengthen the concept of GFAR that could do that, in my view. So the assimilation passed through a dissemination. We have an idea of an access to innovation trust fund, which could do exactly that. But we will talk about that another occasion. Thank you.
We are really pressed for time. I'll take a couple of questions here, and Elizabeth and the gentleman who has been sort of insisting from the farmers' organization. Then we close. Unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add on what Roberto has responded in with regard to the question from the gentleman from Learning Academy Worldwide, because he asked whether there is a kind of platform or dialogue where the smallholder farmers' research needs are integrated into some of these researches that are done. Yeah, I would say that we have a continental platform, the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, and we also have regional platforms. For example, for ESA region, we have Asaleka, where as smallholder farmers we are represented on their boards. But of course, these are private sector-led initiatives. They also come with challenges. Majority of them are heavily donor-funded. So in terms of service delivery, it becomes really a challenge because it has limitations when it comes to funding some of these initiatives.
Yeah, thank you. I'm John from a farmer organization. This is an organization that started very small and continued to grow. We started with a capital of about 500 euros, but now we have grown our turnover to over 3 million euros. The reason was because of certifications. We are fair trade and organic. But now, of recent, EU is changing the standards suddenly. Like for organic, the threshold for chemicals has all of a sudden changed. For us as producers, we pay a lot to maintain these certifications. So why can't EU give us a window for us to review our internal controls for 1 or 2 years so that we can be able to maintain the benefits to our farmers and the certifications? Secondly, can EU create us a window, like in Antwerp, a small store, so that we carry our coffee through the value chain to Europe so that we can gain from spot prices. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a contribution from Jan Dawa as one of the panelists? Then we'll have reactions. Then I'll close by also my own questions.
Yes, there was this question about smallholders very often being poor. Now, I completely agree with the observation of the gentleman. Poverty is not intrinsic to smallholder agriculture. Yeah, they have developed many strategies to face the situation, including multifunctionality, creating new linkages to market. Nonetheless, it's still due to circumstances, a bitter reality that many of them fall into poverty, climb out of it, fall again into it. I myself worked in Guinea-Bissau shortly after the liberation of the country. I worked there for several years, and in the south of Guinea-Bissau you have one of the most beautiful agricultural systems in the world. It's rice growing in tropical rice polders, and it's the Balanta people who are the main producers, like in Basse-Casamance, where you have the same system like in Guinea-Conakry. Now, you start crying when you see this reality regressing. What happens is that the state did not develop over time an adequate infrastructure to make the rice go from the south towards the main cities, especially Bissau. Yeah, there was total neglect of the reality of this smallholder agriculture. And in the meantime, there was massive imports, growing imports of very cheap rice from Asia. And this is the bitter reality, that there are structural problems. Apart from, indeed, education, inputs, access to finance, to markets, there is another issue that is the structural problem in the context. Yeah, and we need the political willingness, the adequate state interventions to correct this. That should be on the agenda. Just, it was rightly observed, as the universities and the research institutes have to define their agenda so as to meet better, far better, finally, with the prospects of smallholder producers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mizi, you want to respond to the gentleman?
On certification, there is a process, I understand, between various services, us, Sante, and Agri on the certification of organic. What is clear is we will continue boosting. We support a lot COLEA-CP. We have fit for market on certification schemes of horticultural products. We are also discussing with the African Union and hopefully next year under the PANAF continued support to SPS. So if there are specific questions on specific products in the organic sector, I'll put you in touch with my colleagues who are around the table so that we can see which product is this concerned with, and I'll get in touch with my colleagues in Sante and in DG Agri to see what we can do and what are the requirements and what is the transition, and so we'll see what we can do on this particular problem. Okay.
Thank you very much, panelists, for your contributions. Just also wanted to make the final call, my last word. Very insightful discussions, very informative, very analytical, new dimensions. I learned quite a few things myself. And many quotable quotes, and I'll quote one specifically from Nora, which was saying almost verbatim, I quote, that the future of smallholders will be largely an outcome of the political choices that are going to be made now. And in making political choices, there is going to be need for dialogue. And that dialogue has to be inclusive, and inclusive meaning that those that are at the center of it, farmers, should really also drive part of the dialogue system. Then the final quote really was about, was from Ms. Ridolfi, who was saying that farming, and also from Jan Dawa, that the sustainability, I mean, smallholder farmers are indispensable to the sustainability, not only of agriculture, but of the entire food system. And the reasons are very clear, and I hope that we're taking away a lot of lessons, a lot of knowledge as we prepare for the next session. 10 minutes break for coffee. You can bring your coffee into the room. Then we start immediately because we have 1 o'clock to aim for. Otherwise, we won't be able to continue. Well, thank you.
Please, can you have a seat? Can people get into the room and have a seat? Please, can you have a seat? Michel Lavolée, you sit. Chris Addison, you sit. I'm going to give names. Jorge, you sit. Excuse me, could you sit? Michel Lavolée, can you sit? I'm going to give names though. Because the problem we have is that we have 4 speakers. We have people coming from farmers' organizations in Africa. If we don't listen to them, I think it will not be nice. And I told you that the interpretation is not negotiable, they finish at 1. So is everybody seated? So thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody for the very rich debates and moderation. So without further delay, we will have very practical cases in panel 2 from finance and blending and from a farmers organization highlighting, some of the markets as well as youth and women and innovations. Our moderator now is, you met this morning the president of the Pan-African Farmers Organization, the one that will moderate now, also a woman, also dynamic and young, is Ms. Fatma Ben Rejeb. She's the Chief Executive Officer of the Pan-African Farmers Organization. She has extensive experience, not only on the farmers, because she was herself the director of UMAGRI, so the Northern Africa Farmers Organization for many years, but she has also worked on the legal and the trade issues related to farmers, as well as on strong administrative and management parts. So I thank you very much. You have just recently had your General Assembly, where actually you nominated your new president, Elizabeth, but you also have just opened your office in Africa, in Rwanda, so that's where they will be operated from. I thank you very much to you and all the farmers we have around the table and for moderating this session. I'm sure that the speakers will keep to their time, that we can still have some time for questions, including for the remaining ones of the first panel. Thank you, Ms. Ben Rejeb.
Merci Isolina. Merci déjà pour ce partenariat stratégique que nous avons depuis plusieurs années. Merci aux ACP et à l'Union européenne. En fait, ce briefing, comme l'a souligné tout à l'heure la présidente, est parmi tant d'autres. Sur les 57 briefings, nous avons même dépassé les 50 briefings sur lesquels nos paysans, nos leaders sont présents pour apporter leur contribution. Le CTA nous a énormément soutenus également en matière de plaidoyer et également en matière d'implémentation. There's no translation? They are not...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay.
When it comes to advocacy, as I said, but also when it comes to decentralizing this briefing as well. These briefings have been organized, as Mr. Ojo just mentioned. It's good to have the regionalization of these briefings, and we've had 4 African briefings already. We've had proposals from African leaders on strategic issues in Africa at various different levels, various strategic questions. And it's thanks to these briefings that farmers and leaders who are present here today have been able to share their successes so that we can capitalize them and upscale them. I won't go into too much detail because time is running on. This is a panel of really motivated individuals, participants who are very committed to promoting the cause of farmers. The first panelist that we have now, there's just one thing that I would like to say in particular about Mr. Mark Decker, who's responsible for evaluation and research and learning at Eco Cooperation. He has left the offices and labs behind him to work on the ground. He wants to teach agriculture, the agricultural sector and farmers. Over to you now, Mr. Decker. Sorry for not speaking in French, but it would be easier for me to speak in English.
Happy to meet you all here. Thanks for the opportunity for speaking about the Strengthening African Rural Smallholders program. So during the first panel session this morning, we heard a lot about smallholders, about the challenges they face, about the solutions they need. And actually, I want now to share our experiences in developing these solutions, in actually presenting concrete solutions regarding access to finance and access to markets to smallholder farmers. So we are a program running in 4 countries. We have been running for 4 years now. It's a 5-year program. We're operating in Senegal, operating in Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And in total, we hope to reach out to 210,000 smallholder farmers. But actually, that's the lower limit. I would say the sky is the real limit. Our program focuses on 2 important pillars. So it's access to finance. And we've heard previous speakers talk a little bit about impossible and possible finance. Well, we're actually pushing to get from impossible to possible finance, even on smallholder level. And the second pillar is the value chain development. There has to be a market and there has to be a functioning value chain. But before I explain a little bit more around this, let me tell you that we are a market-based program. So we focus on the existing market systems, and the way we see it, a smallholder farmer is a client in that market system. He operates in the value chain, and in fact, the market system is not always aligned to his needs. So he is a market actor, but we want to improve his interaction in that market. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the improvements that we envision. So this is only a very small example. It's relating to microcredits. It's admittedly oversimplified, but I hope it gets the message across how we try to improve. So we were talking about access to finance. Well, I think we all realize microfinance has been around for decades. So what's the issue here? Well, if you look to the top side of this slide, you see the standard microloan. So there's an application, there is some processing time. At some point there will be a disbursement of the loan, which is usually maximized at a certain amount. And then there is a very regular repayment. Now this is a standard microloan, so why am I sitting here trying to tell you that it's not working for smallholder farmers? Not always. Well, let me explain to you how we are trying to improve it by looking at the lower side of this slide. So of course there is still a processing time after which disbursement will happen. But we make sure that disbursement happens at the time that the farmers need that finance, which is of course in the planting season. They need to have improved seeds, they need to have labor, they need to have fertilizers. If it's too late, if the money is coming too late and they miss the planting season, the crops will never be good. So we have to be there at the right time. Similarly, how is a farmer repaying his loan if the income is only coming after sale of the crops? So instead of regular repayments, we push towards balloon payments at the end when the cash flow is actually there to repay. So there is a lot more to be said about this. The collateral requirements, the multiple cropping, etc. But this is just a very small example of how we are trying to improve the system by specifically looking at the agricultural cycle, the actual inputs needed and the availability of inputs for the farm, the required loan size, the crop-specific repayment capacity, and the repayment scheme. So a small example of how we are improving what is already there. Now, smallholder farmers already access finance. It's there. Not everybody accesses it always, but it's there. And this is what we find with our specific target group. So around 40% already accesses microfinance loans. Other than that, there is, of course, the village savings and loans associations, the savings and credit cooperatives. There is the informal finance. Farmers actually tend to mix and match the different sources of finance. Still, it shows there is a massive possibility here to improve this system. And that's what we're working on. Now, when we talk about smallholder farmers and their needs for financial solutions, we have to realize smallholder farmers are a wildly divergent group. They're not all the same. They're very different. The graph I'm showing you here shows their poverty distributions. How many farmers are actually below the poverty line, the national poverty line? This is data from Ethiopia. You see around 30% is living below the national poverty line. Yeah, that's the bad news. The good news is 70% is actually living above the poverty line. Not just right above it, but as you can see, some of them are even well above it. Now, these are not rich farmers, let's not be mistaken about that, but they're not the completely destitute farmers either. So these farmers are different in their poverty levels, meaning they also differ in the financial solutions they require. So for those farmers that struggle to actually have a collateral for a loan, we develop group solidarity lending. So that means the group is responsible for each other's loan. And they are the collateral. The social cohesion is the collateral. For farmers more on top in the producer organizations, we work on value chain finance. We work together with large off-takers, processors, World Food Programme, big companies. We work together with commercial banks, and we organize the aggregation and sale of that crop. So that's, of course, at the top end. In the middle, we have, of course, new systems, at least in some countries they are new, like warehouse receipt lending, which allows farmers to not have to sell their crop at the moment of harvest, because then generally prices tend to be a bit lower, but they can actually wait until prices go up again. Individual loan products, we develop them, and even currently we are developing leasing products so that farmers and farmer co-ops can actually access equipment. So this was about access to finance, but the solution doesn't stop there. You can have all the finance in the world going to farmers, but if there is no market, if there is no input supply, it's not really helping him. So we focus on that as well. We focus on a few specific segments, again, of smallholder farmers. Remember, they're not all the same. So part of our outreach is with non-commercial farmers. These are really the subsistence farmers that were already mentioned also this morning. Also, we are looking at commercial farmers in loose value chains. So these are farmers selling to different spot markets, passing traders. And also, we focus on commercial smallholders in tight value chains. Now, this is where the off-taker is already known. It might, for example, and let me give you this example, it might be a big company like Heineken, a beer brewer, who is taking the malt barley from the Ethiopian farmers. It's a very tight value chain, and we also work in those. So what do? Well, farmers need inputs. It can still be an issue. So we work on those input supply systems. Farmers need skills training. We've heard also that one this morning. We work on fee-based trainings. Remember, we are market-based. We work on fee-based trainings that actually help farmers reach that next level. We heard something also on price transparency and market transparency. We're working on that one as well. Market information services, agronomic extension services, all of that we are working on. Similarly, many farmers are organized in farmer co-ops, and we have some interesting representatives of these organizations here. So we help build the capacity, the management capacity of these producer organizations. We help them build their capacity on management, financial management, quality control, post-harvest loss. We're trying to improve that system as well. And of course, the access to markets. So we link those POs to the big buyers. We link them to the commercial banks. We organize the business-to-business sessions, and we help to establish sustainable business models. So my point really is those two pillars, they need to be together. The combination of them, in fact, is key to raise yields, to sell to markets, to increase that crop revenue, and to improve that food security. So on that access to finance, these are the things that we work on. Our main entry point is the microfinance institution, and we do a lot of risk management, portfolio management, capacity building of microfinance institutions. But also we work for the bigger business deals. We work with state and commercial banks. We are slowly venturing a little bit into crowdsourcing. Specifically in Senegal, we have a very nice example of that. Very critical to our success is the work with refinancers. Microfinance institutions need money to lend to farmers. They don't have it out of nothing. So we work with big investors to get them to refinance MFIs. In those cases where that really presents a problem, we're working on savings mobilization. So internal savings amounts that the MFI can then use for lending. And we combine that with the value chain development. We work with those processors, with those really big buyers like Olvea and Occitan and Heineken. We even work with traders. These are the middlemen. Yeah, not always a positive role, but sometimes a necessary role anyway. Our main entry point is again the producer organization. So we do a lot of capacity building there. Of course, the prime focus is the smallholder farmer, and we work with those input suppliers, business development service providers, farmer field school. Now, this is a bit of our outreach. To be very honest, I don't know why I put it there. It's utterly boring. Let me go to this one. This one is really more interesting because we want to be close to these farmers. We want to know what their needs are. We want to hear the solutions they are looking for. So we went to them. We sat with them under their trees, in their compounds, in their offices, in their fields. And we talked to them. What do you need? How is it? How are things improving? And, formal impact studies are still underway. It will come. But I have a few examples, at least from some case studies that we did. So still a formal study, but not statistically representative. I will immediately admit that. So what do we see happening at the smallholder farmer level in Burkina Faso? Sesame farmers improving their farmer techniques, accessing credit, raising their yields from 80 to 300 kilograms per hectare, going from 2 to 3 meals a day. Now that's food security, increasing food security. Senegal, farmers accessing warehouse receipt lending. They receive higher prices on their yields, have less post-harvest loss, increase their food security specifically in the lean season when it's worst. Rwanda, this is more on how we change systems. We introduced credit risk management with MFIs. The moment we did that in one branch, we saw agri-loan sizes increasing because now the MFI is aware of risks. And we saw non-performing loans, the defaulting loans, dropping to almost zero. That's how we are improving the partner, the commercial system with the partner. Ethiopia, a group of potato farmers, we linked them to a big buyer, which was actually a Dutch potato chip manufacturer. The first year, they sold nearly 2.5 metric tons, which is not really the point. The point is, it now generates interests of MFIs to finance this chain. So we are de-risking this value chain, getting the finance now flowing. So maybe quickly to wrap up, because I'm getting some signals from my... what are drivers of success for us? It really starts with understanding the system. So you have to do your homework, and you have to build in continuous learning loops. You pilot something, but maybe it doesn't work. You adapt and you change. So learning loops are always there. It also means you have to be flexible to adapt. When market conditions change, you adapt. If something doesn't work, you adapt. It means there is no linear blueprint implementation anymore. Now, it sounds very nice when we're talking about agile and dynamic and all those approaches. Actually, yeah, this does cause a bit of discomfort. It's not predictable what we do, which is sometimes difficult for a donor, even difficult for ourselves. We have to follow where the market leads us. A single solution for us just doesn't work. We are a bit more holistic than that. We blend all these multiple solutions. And really the scale up for us is in changing the system. If the system independent from us is changing, yeah, we're free to step back and let the market take over. Now, are we seeing this systemic change that we're after? And remember, this is the holy grail that we're after, so it's not there yet, but we're seeing early signs. We're seeing MFIs internally scale up and expand these developed products to new crops and new branches. We see producer organizations becoming more service and market oriented, now receiving credit from commercial banks where previously there was none. We see farmers now showing a willingness to pay for services where normally they would not have much of that willingness. We see a value chain coordination that is improving, for example, in the interprofession, which is more of the West African approach. New MFIs, new POs are looking to join STARS, and actually we're implementing our approach also in different value chains as well. Now, a few challenges still exist. They're standardized, everybody will know them by heart. Let me just mention that a few of the topics we also heard this morning. How do we include the climate resilient agriculture? How do we focus specifically on youth and gender in market systems? How can we still push that digital innovation in loan assessments, in tracking product flow? And how do we work on fair and transparent pricing? That's the focus for us in the last year. But this is really what I wanted to show you. So thanks for your attention. And I hope I'm still on time.
Thank you very much.
Merci Marco.
Thank you, Marco. Unfortunately, we haven't got too much time to go into great detail about your presentation, but I'm sure there'll be some questions afterwards to help us learn a bit more about this matter. Now I'd like to hand over to Mamadou Goita. He's also very committed to farmers and farmers associations in Africa. He's the executive director of EAPAD, but he also works on a far larger scale, far beyond his work at EAPAD. So now I'd like to hand over to Mamadou. And Mamadou, I will have to remind you to perhaps be a bit quicker. Thank you, Fatma. I'll try to be brief. And the documents will be available to you afterwards. I would have to talk a bit about the territorial aspect and family farmers and their ability to meet the needs of urban centres for food. One fundamental question is, what exactly are we talking about when we talk about territorial markets? They have been the object of the Food Security Committee, and they have a rather interesting definition, and there's an interesting definition on page 2. They're local, national and regional markets, so very diverse markets, and you might be operating at the local or urban level, peri-urban, national level. So all these different levels. They're also directly linked to the farmers and the processing. So 2 points here. Territorial markets are not just local markets. We often hear of local markets being very marginalized markets in a village, which can't really create wealth. What we need, and the fact is that many of these markets go beyond just the village, so they're not really just local markets, territorial markets. People often say as well that they're they're informal markets, but that's not true either. There is a tax system. There is an informal aspect to these markets, but there is also a formal side to these markets that go beyond just a community or a village. And they're often cross-border markets as well, covering a whole zone. There are also 8 characteristics that have been defined of these markets. The marketing of these products are linked to the creation of wealth, and the wealth created is done in the territory. And very often people are surprised that the growth rate in Africa is high, but people are increasingly poor. But that's the way the economic system is in these countries. The wealth is created inside the country, but the people benefiting from this are outside the country because their wealth is exported, despite the fact that it's created in the country. So there's a number of points that I want to emphasize in my presentation. In most countries, in particular West Africa, haven't defined the aim of the agricultural sector. We've got pastoralism, we've got livestock farming. What does this mean? Well, it means that these countries in general don't have an agricultural policy. So the question is, what type of market are we talking about? What we didn't hear this morning, less than 20% of these products are on the formal markets and on the global markets, but 80% of the produce is not on the global markets. And that has created the situation that we are finding ourselves in many countries now. So it's about the circulation of food and food produce. So we need to first solve the problem and define the type of vision that we have for the agricultural sector in these countries before we can resolve the issues that the agricultural sectors are facing and the markets are facing. There's not a lot is known about these markets. They create wealth to feed the population, but this wealth also needs to be redistributed within the country at the regional level as well. So here's an example. You can't read it very well, but it's about the structure of investments. These family farms can improve the quality of their produce. We had a food crisis in 2008, and a lot of countries took measures to support family farms to help them produce better and more effectively. Rice, for example, we saw a rise of 11% before and after the crisis. Maize, that rose by 10% in West Africa. So here you can see West African countries. And we have 59 million tons of cereal that were produced. So that's a substantial rise and has an impact on global production. And most of these countries did increase their production with support from the state, with infrastructure support, but also financial support. The question of financing, Well, there's a number of points I wanted to emphasize here. Family farmers face a number of risks. Their ability to improve their the way the markets are structured, but also to create wealth is a very important thing. These farmers need to be able to reinvest in their farmers, and this is important at the local level. It's important for territorial communities, and it's also a question of national budgets as well. The three risks I want to emphasize: economic risks, linked to the perception that many investors have of family farmers. The economic risk linked to the fact that these farmers find it difficult to access loans. 15 to 18% is the amount of loans that of family farms that can access loans in these areas. And the loans simply aren't adapted to funding these types of farm. The interest rate is very high, and the loans are for too short a period to allow the farmers to develop over time. So these risks, and then there are natural risks and technical risks related to climate change, to the risks of that the crops themselves face, and also the animals that they might become sick, for example. There are a number of initiatives in the region that I won't insist on. Now, let's look at the needs. I don't know how many minutes I've got left, but I'll try to tell you about this. The first level of need is very important. It's about human capital and social capital. We talked about training and support and basic infrastructure. These are the best ways to ensure the distribution of this wealth and this food in the territory. And we don't have an ideal situation at the moment at all. There are structures to distribute the food in areas where it's not produced, and there are a number of countries that are doing well here, but not all. And access to education, access to water as well, the power on the market, negotiating power on the markets, the capacity to influence policymakers as well. Now, 3 suggestions that I'd like to conclude with. The first aspect is the type of support. Funding these types of farms is an essential issue. The credit system, the lending system at the moment is not suitable for these family farms. The second point, there are structural problems that need to be sorted out. And there's questions of road transport, storage problems. And then there's support for food security and food sovereignty. And this needs to be sorted out at the regional level and at the national level. And there could be various means of improving this. Now, improving production, territorial markets, these need to be adapted and made far more coherent. And then, of course, the regulating of these markets, that needs to be sorted as well. And, of course, the processing of these produce, agro-food business as well, so that the family farmers can access these processing systems. And, of course, and of course training for young farmers as well. So all this information is available in the presentation. Thank you.
Merci Mamadou.
Thank you, Mamadou.
Et merci de comprendre.
And thank you for understanding the fact that we're a bit short of time. I'd now like to call on Mr. Kola Masha, Managing Partner of Babangona from Nigeria, also working closely with farmers. It's a social enterprise helping small farmers. Kola, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Good morning, everyone. So today we are here to talk about Babangona and the work that we're doing with smallholder farmers in northern Nigeria. So Babangona, which means great farm in the language of northern Nigeria, Hausa, is a highly innovative, scalable, and financially sustainable business that is part owned by the farmers that we serve. In effect, what Babangona does is address the underlying reason why small-scale farmers are poor, which is their low economies of scale, and enables them to dramatically improve their profitability and productivity. So we have definitely not done this alone. We have a tremendous group of partners that particularly have provided a significant amount of debt financing to enable us to scale. I must begin by thanking the EU, particularly through the EDFI program, that has been a critical partner for us, among others. And with that support, over the last 10 years, we've been able to generate significant impact and be able to garner a lot of support from other partners. Forbes recently listed us as one of the top 5 most innovative social enterprises on the planet. We were the first organization to win to be the first for-profit organization to win the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship. Bill Gates recently highlighted us as one of 5 agricultural innovations to reduce carbon emissions. And we were recently listed by the London Stock Exchange as companies that inspire Africa. In addition, we've been our work particularly in supporting the reducing the impact of insurgencies in the region that we operate has been highlighted by the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, amongst others. Now, these are Babangona members. You can see they're quite happy. Why? Over the last several years, the average Babangona member has been able to achieve yields that are more than 2 times the national average. They've been able to achieve net incomes that are more than 2.5 times the national average. This has enabled us to scale about 300-fold since inception. Today, we are the single largest maize-producing entity in Nigeria. Cumulatively, we have deployed over 140,000 loans to smallholder farmers in northern Nigeria and achieved a repayment rate of over 99%. And finally, we've been able to do that while being financially sustainable. So we are able to do that and achieve a positive net income doing that. Now, before we talk about exactly what we do, I want to talk briefly about why we do it. Well, in Nigeria alone, from 1990 to 2010, about 20 million youth entered the Nigerian workforce. This triggered youth unemployment to spike over 60%, triggering not 1, not 2, but 3 insurgencies. And we fundamentally believe that as oxygen is to fire, so are unemployed youth to insecurity. With a median age of 18, in Nigeria alone and across the ACP region, that number is much larger. We'll have 80 million youth entering the workforce between 2010 and 2030. Put that in context, that's the population, approximately the population of Germany. Now, we firmly believe that there is a solution, and that solution is smallholder agriculture, which is the region's job creation engine. It's massive, typically 25 to 30% of GDP, tremendous growth potential, labor intensive, and requires relatively limited skills. Now, the reality, though, most people would say that why would a young person want to be a smallholder farmer? Well, they don't want to be a smallholder farmer because they're very rational. To them, they've seen their mother, their father, their grandmother, their grandfather practice smallholder farming and being stuck in poverty. But the reason why they've been stuck in poverty is an underlying structural problem, which is those low economies of scale. And in addition, as a young smallholder farmer, you have an additional burden. They typically have smaller farm sizes due to hereditary practices. They have increased labor costs, and they have limited savings to invest or use as collateral to access financing for inputs. Now, this causes them to be stuck in a cycle of poverty. The reality, though, is this is not a unique problem to smallholders in Africa. This is a problem that smallholder farmers around the world had. My grandfather, who emigrated from Germany to the US and became a smallholder farmer 100 years ago in South Dakota, within 30 years was able to make enough money to send my mother to university. Why? The power of farmer cooperatives that basically solve that low economy of scale challenge by enabling small farmers to dramatically improve their profitability and productivity. So this is what we do at Babangona. We franchise a network of grassroots level farmer cooperatives and enable them to effectively operate as one great farm. How does it work? Well, at the core of what we do is identify leaders, individuals that we believe will be great leaders of grassroots level farmer cooperatives. We do this in a very rigorous and systematic way. We've developed a psychometric test that we've deployed now to over 200,000 smallholder farmers that assesses a person's potential to be a leader of a grassroots level farmer cooperative. Once we identify those individuals, we work side by side with them to build that mini farmer group. Today, we are supporting over 6,000 of these mini farmer groups in northern Nigeria. And once they're formed, we support them with 4 services. The first being guidance. Guidance on how to unlock their leadership potential. Guidance on how to migrate from a subsistence to a commercial mindset to really start thinking of their farms as businesses. And finally, guidance on how to become better farmers. The second and most important is credit. If you look at a smallholder farmer like Ibrahim Mustafa here, before he joined Babangona, he had no ID, no land title, limited cash, no phone, no financial history, no formal address, required a relatively small loan size of under $1,000, lives in remote northern Nigeria, is a new borrower in a low-value commodity and loose value chain. Not exactly a sterling example of a customer you want to finance. But we've been able to do that and achieve a 99% repayment rate, do it financially sustainably, and I'm happy to answer questions on how we've managed that risk. Now, one of the key things we've done is the average age of farmers in Nigeria is about 55 years old. The average age of a Babangona member, or I should say about 45% of our members consistently are youth. Why? Because we designed our credit package specifically to attract them. It's designed to optimize yield. So even on their small farms, they're able to make very high yields. Last season, about 40% of our farmers attained yields of over 5 tons per hectare for maize. They were able to, we finance labor-saving technology so that they're able to overcome their increased labor cost. And the model requires very limited collateral and basically utilizes the crop in the field as the collateral. So we have a very sophisticated mechanism where we leverage technology. We have I think to our knowledge, we have the largest technology team that develops applications specifically for smallholder farmers. We leverage really advanced systems. We've developed artificial intelligence, machine learning applications that help to basically be very predictive of what farmers' problems are. So we manage those crops very, very closely. We have Nigeria's, one of Nigeria's largest fleet of motorcycles to go out and actually visit all these farms. And so that helps us basically ensure that we can finance them effectively. Now, that credit comes 100% in kind in a complete and holistic set of inputs. all the way from the highest quality seeds and other inputs to a farm analysis. A person visits their farm every 2 to 4 weeks throughout the season, all the way down to harvesting, where we provide them the empty bag, the needle, and the thread. And finally, marketing, where we basically, we've invested now in over 60,000 tons of storage capacity. Farmers can deposit their grains with us, and we basically market those products for them over the next 9 months, deploying the profits from that transaction as a dividend payment to them every quarter. Now, finally, climate change is very important. And I think just to highlight some of the things that we've done on that, the work we're doing on the storage side has dramatic improvements on reducing food loss. We've improved supply chain efficiencies by ensuring that a farmer's produce is touched 50% less than normally, dramatically reducing its carbon footprint. And finally, the work we're doing to stimulate the growth of the poultry industry by reducing costs in the sector will help to shift the diets towards poultry, which has a 50% less greenhouse gas emissions. On resilience, we've financed, we're in the process of developing systems to finance access to irrigation to make them more resilient. We are leveraging drought-tolerant seeds, developed very innovative insurance products, and we are improving soil structures to increase the water retention capacity. In closing, here is an example of one of our members, Haruna Adamu, and what we think about is how we think about our impact is in terms of enabling Haruna to unlock his dreams. And for him, that was ensuring that his children, Abdul, Nana, and Asiya, are properly educated. Our vision is to enable 1 million smallholder farmers like Haruna achieve their dreams by 2025, impacting over 5 million people. Thank you.
Merci, Cola.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Anik. She was a doctor. She studied medicine, but then she dropped medicine to become a farmer. So she's somebody who is clearly very passionate about agriculture. And she will explain what CAPAD has been doing in Burundi and what successes it has achieved. Thank you, Fatma, and thank you to the CTA for giving me this opportunity to speak. When Isolina called me to ask me to speak about the impact of women's organisations, I was tempted to answer, well, I'm living proof of that impact. Fatma, I studied medicine as a farmer, whilst being a farmer, if you like. So I grew up with CAPAD. I lost my parents quite early on. I'm the oldest child in the family. I learnt about farming from my late parents, and then we used that to make a living. And I was involved in CAPAD from the very beginning, before it was actually a fully fledged organisation. It is now a national confederation of producers. So basically, I grew with as the structure grew. So I was able to earn enough to pay for my studies. When I completed my studies, I was asked to stay on in CAPAD and share my experiences and my knowledge with others. But if I'd said that, you probably wouldn't have believed me, Isolina.
Donc je dis.
So my reaction was slightly different. I said, look, this is quite timely because we've recently carried out a study using money from the Food Security Fund. Marek is here representing one of our supporters. Basically, we carried out this study, this project. It was a multiplayer project, but we focused on restructuring and the creation of groups, added value and markets. I have circulated the brochure. It's this brochure, and we sounded out women in farming, and their views can be found in the brochure. It's only in French at the moment. The English version isn't available yet. So what exactly is CAPAD? Well, it's a farmers' organization. We have 135,814 smallholder family farm households, and they live from agricultural crops, fruits and vegetables in the main. We're present in most municipalities in Burundi, and most members of CAPAD are women, 72%. It's very important when it comes to assessing the need for digitalization, and I'd like to thank the different organizations who've supported us in our efforts to monitor farms, and thank you for helping us in our attempts to plan agricultural areas and our activities in structuring the market. Now, we have 62% women, as I said, but in the meetings of CAPAD, initially, there weren't any women present. And when I started to become active in CAPAD, I did ask the question. I asked the men why there weren't any women, and they said, don't worry about it, women haven't got enough time. Women have no time. In any case, we're here, we'll tell them what's going on. And as you're here, you can tell them as well. Well, we tried to find out exactly why women weren't taking part actively in their organization, and we asked the women themselves. Obviously, women have a number of challenges, but over and above those challenges, they made 2 points relating directly to CAPAD. They said, since the creation of the Confederation, you've only trained men. We don't know how to chair a meeting. We don't know how to draw up a set of minutes. And then they also said that when a meeting is organized locally, men choose a time of day where we can't attend, when we're out in the fields, for example. So we tried to work on those 2 points which concerned us directly, and also tried to find out why there was so little training for women. One of the reasons was that a lot of the women in CAPAD were illiterate. A large part of them were illiterate, so we tried to focus on that, so that we could improve the participation of women in the activities of the Confederation. As you all know, women have other challenges as well, access to resources, etc. You're all familiar with these issues. So what has CAPAD been doing, or what does CAPAD do with its farmers? When women explained this situation to us, we looked at how to reverse the situation. The women themselves came up with very interesting proposals. They wanted there to be parity, for example, in participation in bodies, in participation in meetings. And they wanted a rotating presidency in the groups, and they wanted this to be enshrined in the rules of procedure, so that everybody followed that rule, to make sure that those rules were respected. And then our women colleagues said, we have specific problems. We know that this organization is working to improve access to financing. You work with the banks, but the money from the banks doesn't reach us. Sometimes we only need small amounts and microfinancing isn't interested. Let's say we need a very, we only need a very, very small amounts and the microfinance people just aren't interested. So we looked at other structures to allow women to have access to financing. And we do this through the solidarity mutual associations. Women make a small contribution to those associations, but these are groups that can act for them in the eyes of the microfinance people to try and get better access to funding. Then there's the question of processing, valorization, access to markets. Since 2015, Burundi has been in a very fragile state. There have been sanctions from the EU, so that has had an impact. But it's also created certain opportunities, because it meant that the people of Burundi have consumed local products more than they did before. It was because of the sanctions, it was difficult to import products, and that's why we've consumed more locally. Cooperatives were set up, which have allowed us to find an outlet for our production, to add value, and to get the best possible price for our members. I know that the interpreters will be leaving soon. I was going to conclude anyway. I just wanted to say something about the testimonies of these women. My own experience isn't enough, really. Mrs. Paskazi is 44 years old and she's got 13 children. She has been working with us to improve her income and to improve access to markets. She said that before we had to sign up to very expensive loans. We heard that earlier, exorbitant rates. Now I have more than 10 loans with the mutual organisation at much better rates, which has allowed me to move forward on a number of projects. So it's thanks to this mutual organisation that she was able to buy a pig and a cow. And they supply manure, etc. And they provide milk as well. So life is better for her now, as she said, because her children have a more varied diet. They now have access to milk, for example, which they didn't before. And then Espérance Nizigimana. The details of their statements can be found in the brochure. She's 33 years old, 5 children. That's the birth rate in our country. We have a lot of children. And she has been involved in a cooperative, in a mutual organisation. She says this has allowed her to foster social links, and it has allowed her to diversify resources. Thanks to soft loans, she has been able to vary her activities and thus increase her income. And she said that together with the members of her group, they were able to set up a different system, a kind of credit system. You know, we give you a pig, you reimburse the pig, and perhaps a bit more. That's the kind of system that was set up. So when it comes to participation of women in groups and cooperatives, this allows them to increase their income, and it also builds self-confidence. It means that they get more recognition in society and they gain in legitimacy. In CAPAD, we're working on issues that we weren't able to tackle before. For example, women having access to the land belonging to their husband. In the past, land was handed down from father to children, but now we're trying to ensure that it is possible to transfer it to the woman or to have land in both their names. A few years ago, we wouldn't have been able to tackle this problem, but now, because women are around the table, sitting around the table, it's possible for us to do this. It's very important. It's a question of justice. I make this point to my own husband. It's a question of social justice. Some things seem banal, really. Access to storage, for example. But access to storage for women is very important. It means that you avoid wastage. It allows people to, it allows women to manage their stocks more effectively through the storage system. They can improve control over their stocks. And this also encourages co-management between husband and wife. And participation in these organizations increases the decision-making power of women. Thank you.
Et puis peut-être je rajouterai, Annie, que...
Perhaps I could just add something. When it comes to empowerment of women, that means empowerment of the whole family. It's not just for women. The interpreters are now leaving, I'm afraid. The interpreters will now have to leave because we have another meeting this afternoon. But we'll keep on discussing these matters and take any comments that you might have. Isolina, I think we'll have to do a bit of interpretation ourselves. Thank you very much.
Et puis, bon, je ne sais pas si Isolina se porte volontaire pour la traduction. Je peux le faire avec toi également.
Okay. I can
Mais
translate.
là, une recommandation, s'il vous plaît, c'est que, bon, vous présentez votre organisation. Si c'est un commentaire ou une question, ne vous étalez pas trop pour qu'on puisse donner la chance à tous les intervenants qui voudraient intervenir. Donc je prends une première série de questions, ceux qui veulent intervenir.
So a series of very short questions with your name and very focused because we have no interpretation. So I can help and I will circulate my bank account, by the way. Yes, you will have to pay.
Yes. Donc 1, ceci, 2, 3 et 4. On va revenir à une deuxième série de questions. Allez-y.
Good morning. My name is Simon Severis. I'm
Sorry, the first one is the last from there. We are going to take a second round of questions, please.
Merci beaucoup, Fatma.
Since you speak English and French, please speak in the two languages. So we are not going to translate your question.
All right, okay, thank you. Congratulations to the presenters because they did a very good presentation. Mine is for Bob.
Présente-toi, s'il te plaît, Rostin.
Oh, pardon. I'm Cecil Rostin Akoha, M&E Principal Officer from ROPA, which is the Western African Farmers Organization. So my question, I have only one question for Babangona. I think the device they present, the mechanisms is very great, but I just want to know, I want to have a bit details on the mechanisms. How do they select the farmers that they support? How do they choose them among their society, among the communities? La question que je voudrais poser, ça s'adresse à Babangona. Comment est-ce qu'ils font la sélection des petits exploitants qu'ils soutiennent au niveau de leur communauté? Il a dit que le niveau de paiement est très élevé. Les gens retournent le crédit qu'on leur donne. Mais comment est-ce qu'ils sélectionnent ces différents producteurs-là? Merci.
Merci.
Ok. Moi, c'est Birba Atanas de la Fédération des professionnels agricoles du Burkina. J'ai une question à l'adresse de M. Marco. Parce que notre fédération intervient également dans l'appui à la production auprès des petits producteurs à travers la mise à leur disposition des engrais. Mais le remboursement se fait en nature, pas en espèces. Et ça nous permet de collecter les céréales et de revendre. Mais on accompagne également ces petits producteurs au marché à travers une commercialisation groupée de leurs produits pour éviter qu'ils ne bradent leurs produits. Là, nous, on les accompagne dans la négociation des prix pour vraiment qu'ils accèdent à de meilleurs prix. Maintenant, comme eux, ils sont également dans pratiquement la même approche, en année de mauvaise pluviométrie, s'il n'y a pas de production intéressante, comment vous, à votre niveau, vous récupérez le crédit que vous octroyez aux producteurs? Parce que nous aussi, c'est un point sur lequel on est en train de réfléchir pour voir, parce qu'on prend le crédit avec les banques,
merci,
on accompagne.
Merci. Yes.
Yes, so Mr. Biba Tanaz is from FEBAPE in Burkina Faso, with a Federation of Producers Organizations in grains and cereals. They do support the producers in getting better prices, better market access, in grouping themselves, to sell the production. So the question he raises is to Marco, and because they face some challenges, so we would like to understand how you operate in the years, for example, where it has been no rain, drought, and others, to kind of get back the credit.
Okay, next one, please.
Hello, my name is Professor Linson. I'm a neuroscientist very much interested in governance and education of tomorrow. I'm here to offer practical solutions beyond intellectual entertainment. There is a need for a tool to facilitate coordinated multi-stakeholder collaboration throughout Africa and beyond. And there is also a need for an appropriate training tool for all the stakeholders and potential farmers in Africa. We can provide this with the new capacity building program, with already 140 countries participating, and we are busy setting up our task force, so you are invited to contact us. I would like also to make a short comment regarding the intervention from the Commission. This is more related to Nora's intervention. Indeed, coherence is very far from being optimal, and the SDGs are, in fact, a sophisticated transcription of the new capacity building program, so sophisticated that they have become unimplementable. So I'd like to remind the audience and panel that there is a need, that we are faced with a global network of interconnected global challenges that can only be appropriately managed by first setting up a new global governance infrastructure based on trust. So now here, this is where the Commission comes in.
Professor.
Yes, I'm nearly finishing. They are speaking of a baseline. Well, a baseline must be based on trust. I had the impression that we have an imposed baseline that has been imposed by an imposed President, van der Leyen. So all this makes me rather uncomfortable. Thank you.
Yes. To be in the subject of this panel, please, we can't go back to the first panel. So, Isolina...
Oui, professeur Linsen, je vais traduire ce qui correspond à ce débat. Professeur Linsen, qui travaille dans les neurosciences, alors il nous interpelle sur la nécessité, d'ailleurs je me souviens que vous parlez français, hein, la prochaine fois vous traduirez, que vous poussez pour des solutions très très pratiques et surtout pour un mécanisme ou un outil qui puisse faciliter le dialogue de tous les acteurs. Et dans ce contexte, y compris d'ailleurs renforcement de capacité et de formation. Dans ce contexte, il lance un nouveau programme de renforcement de capacité qui intéresse les producteurs et d'autres acteurs, et il invite dans plus de 140 pays, et il invite d'ailleurs à le contacter si vous êtes intéressé. Vous avez vu où il se trouve, et il aussi, ce qui rentre un petit peu dans une partie de ce que Nora disait, il faut qu'on réfléchisse peut-être à un nouveau modèle de gouvernance, en tout cas qui appuie les petits producteurs, ou renforcement des petits producteurs dans des modèles de gouvernance qui les concernent.
Merci. Le dernier pour ce...
Oui, merci. Je m'appelle Joseph Kouchika. Joseph Kouchika, venu du Bénin, d'une organisation paysanne appelée Conseil de concertation des riziculteurs du Bénin. Et là, je représente le cadre régional des organisations de producteurs de riz de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Ma question s'adresse à M. Marco par rapport à l'appui, à la mise en place des financements. Quel est le taux de crédit que vous appliquez aux producteurs?
So Mr. Joseph Kouchika is from Benin. He's from the organization of producers of rice. He's also representing the regional negotiation framework for rice in West Africa. His question is directed to Marco and to know what credit rate you apply to producers. Thank you.
Alors, étant donné que nous avons des questions juste pour Marco et pour Baba, alors c'est Cola, voilà, pardon. Nous allons prendre encore quelques questions. On a eu un commentaire, donc on va prendre encore quelques questions, comme ça vous pouvez répondre à toutes les questions. So since we have only two questions for Marco and for Cola, we are going to take other questions so they are able to answer after the second round of questions. So I see you have asked to... okay, who else? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? And please, if you are bilingual, you can ask your question in English and in French. Donc, s'il vous plaît, si vous êtes bilingue, vous pouvez... you have understood me. Ok. Ok, 2. Donc, 1, 2. C'est bon. Et 3. La commission. Ok. So, please.
Simon Severis, private advisor of Maria de Los Angeles Garcia from Dignity Service. I have a question. J'ai une question pour toute l'audience, for the whole audience. Come and join us if you want to rebuild the agriculture value chains in Sierra Leone. This is a project we have started 9 months ago. We had 4 visits. Nous avons débuté il y a 9 mois. Nous avons réalisé 4 visites et nous sommes prêts aussi à y associer la qualité des orateurs que j'ai rencontrés aujourd'hui à l'ACP CT1. And we will be associating the quality people representing the speakers today at CTA. We have private and public funding. We have developed a tool that allows us to develop a financing of national development priorities of countries, to start with Sierra Leone. Nous avons donc développé avec des acteurs institutionnels internationaux une capacité financière importante pour soutenir tous les plans nationaux de développement tels que les gouvernements les mettent en place. Je vous remercie et je serai ravi de vous rencontrer après le déjeuner. Merci.
I'm David Mwonge from Uganda, a smallholder coffee farmer that works for a farmers organization called New Cafe. My question goes to Marco, and specifically on the access to finance. I don't know if in your work you have come across the need for patient capital or long-term financing for the smallholder farmers, because in most cases we're told long-term financing is for the bigger need. Thank you.
Donc, David Mugomwe de Nous Café, qui est une grande coopérative en Ouganda, évidemment, qui produit du café. Sa question va aussi à Marco sur l'accès aux finances et notamment sur la finance de long terme, le crédit de long terme, qui, il comprend, est souvent réservé plutôt à de très grandes compagnies ou de très grandes organisations. Merci.
Merci pour la parole. Bruno Leclerc, Commission européenne, DEFCO. La question va à tous les représentants des organisations paysannes. Questions goes to all representatives from the farm organization about commodity price on the world market and its fluctuation, which is a key issue that has not very much been raised during this morning session. And practically, I would like to have your opinion and your reaction and potential action related to the recent political call from Ivory Coast, Ghana, for an increase of the cocoa price. Thank you very much. En français, donc nous n'avons pas abordé durant cette matinée ou très peu la problématique des prix des denrées alimentaires sur les marchés mondiaux et sur la fluctuation de ces prix. C'est un problème autant pour les petits agriculteurs de la région ACP que pour les agriculteurs européens. Comment vous positionnez-vous par rapport à cette problématique majeure de prix au plancher et tout particulièrement, un cas concret, que pensez-vous et comment réagissez-vous et comment agissez-vous par rapport à la déclaration récente du gouvernement ivoirien et ghanéen par rapport à la fixation d'un prix plus élevé pour le cacao? Merci.
Merci Bruno. Donc là, on va faire un dernier tour de table parmi nos honorables panélistes. Donc je vous donne la parole pour 5-6 minutes à peu près, durant laquelle essayez de clôturer et de répondre aux questions. Have you understood? Or...
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I don't need to translate.
Oh, sorry, if you can.
So it's a last round that I give 5 minutes for each panelist. For each.
It's too long.
No, not 5 minutes. 5 minutes to close. No, it's not each one is going to speak 5 minutes. No. During his intervention, we are not going to remain here till 2. Each one is going to answer the questions and to close with this panel. So I begin with Marco.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions, all of you. Let me try to be as brief as possible in answering them. They're sort of interrelated. I will first start with the interest rate. We follow the regular interest rates at MFIs. So this can range a little bit from 18 to even up to 24% annual interest. So this is not a reduced interest rate. It's a commercial interest rate because we feel the MFI has to be a sustainable organization. So we do not reduce it. However, I would like to point out that in, let's say, the setting of the smallholder farmer, we find they quite often even approach the informal finance, which has rates ranging up to even 100, 200% interest rates. So we find this is feasible, but it's actually necessary for MFI sustainability. So that's on the interest rates. Do you want to translate in between?
Donc pour les taux d'intérêt qu'ils suivent sont les taux plus ou moins officiels, 18 à 24% de taux annuels. Ce n'est pas donc un taux réduit. Cependant, dans la partie informelle, souvent les taux de finance vont de 100 à 300%.
C'est vrai. In terms of the long-term finance, yes, we find there is a need. On the one hand, it has to do with access to equipment, which is not a short-term investment. So in that sense, we are working on a leasing product that allows for this long-term finance. However, that goes beyond just a financial solution, because once you talk about equipment, you have to be there also thinking about maintenance, etc. So in that sense, it's a bit more complicated than just the financial part, but we are moving into that one. And also as a next step in the individual loans, we will be looking into multiple cycles. Farmers taking out a loan to cover multiple cycles of their harvest.
Donc sur la finance, le crédit à long terme, alors en effet, ils ont quelques solutions. Une, c'est sûr, ça concerne surtout d'ailleurs l'accès à l'équipement qui bien évidemment n'est pas quelque chose de court terme. Et ils sont en train de travailler sur un produit de leasing dans ça, de crédit. Deuxièmement, en fait, ce n'est pas uniquement aussi un problème de finance, parce que très souvent, dans les problèmes d'équipement, il y a un problème de maintenance. Donc, ce n'est pas uniquement d'avoir l'argent, mais toute une série, c'est assez complexe. Mais ils sont aussi en train de travailler sur un crédit individuel, hein, qui s'occupe aussi de cycles multiples pour les producteurs.
And finally, on the repayment, we work with MFIs to install with them a tool for improving the risk, the loan assessment, better understanding the agricultural risk. So they go through the whole series of questions, which includes the land size, the crop, the market prices, the prices of labor, prices of inputs. So they better understand what is the loan size required and then actually project towards the repayment capacity at harvest time. So normally that risk assessment procedure helps them to increase their loan repayment. There is a bit of a caveat, how do you pronounce, where external shocks like droughts can disturb a system. Now that one is not included, but we do then work on client protection principles that actually say the moment a farmer defaults based on a drought, for example, the loan is restructured. He does not lose the collateral, but the loan is restructured for payment at a later time. So we try to include that as well. And third, at MFI level, we ensure at portfolio level they don't invest too heavily in an agricultural portfolio, because this opens them as institutions up to that risk. So we look at a spread in that portfolio so that at their level also the risk is a bit more managed.
Sur la partie de paiement, de remboursement, ils travaillent avec les institutions financières de manière à ce qu'ils aient une meilleure compréhension du risque agricole qui comporte ou qui inclut certains facteurs. Donc, ils travaillent beaucoup sur les évaluations de risque, la terre, enfin la size de la terre, quelle culture, quel prix de marché, quel prix des inputs, etc. Donc, pour mieux comprendre le crédit qui est nécessaire et donc adapter la capacité de remboursement de manière plus réaliste. Alors, sur la question des chocs, des sécheresses ou des choses comme ça, ce n'est pas intégré actuellement dans le crédit, mais ce qu'ils font, de manière bien entendu à ce que le client récupère le crédit, c'est de travailler sur la restructuration du crédit, en fonction évidemment des catastrophes qui ont eu lieu, de manière à ce que la personne ne perde pas le crédit en soi, mais qu'il soit restructuré. Et ensuite, aussi travailler avec les institutions financières de manière à ce que le portefeuille soit plus large que uniquement la partie agricole, mais que le risque soit, disons, divisé dans plusieurs parties de secteurs.
Oui, c'est ça.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. Now I give the floor to Mamadou to give his final remarks and especially perhaps answer the question of Bruno. Donc là, je donne le micro maintenant à Mamadou, qui va parler dans les deux langues. Comme ça, tu peux te reposer, Isolina. Et notamment, peut-être répondre à la question de Bruno, de la Commission européenne.
Merci beaucoup. Assez rapidement, donc, par rapport à la situation du Côte d'Ivoire, je pense que c'est le reflet de ce qui se passe au niveau de l'ensemble du continent. Qu'aujourd'hui, la question de la fluctuation des prix pose énormément de problèmes aux producteurs. Souvent, il y a des incitations à travers des financements en amont qui poussent à cette augmentation de la production, mais la question des marchés pose énormément de difficultés. Donc, on a vu que les mesures qui avaient été prises par la Côte d'Ivoire et le Ghana avaient porté des fruits, parce qu'il y a eu un impact sur les prix sur les marchés, compte tenu de la position de ces deux États. Mais malgré cette position de monopole, parce que plus de la moitié de la production de cacao se trouve dans ces deux pays-là, malgré cette position, je pense qu'il y a eu aussi une contre-offensive du marché, donc qui était de pousser à rabaisser, compte tenu du fait aussi que les acheteurs sont... la clientèle est plus ou moins non diversifiée. Donc, compte tenu de cette situation, on voit aujourd'hui qu'il doit avoir une cause commune. Le cacao est juste une porte d'entrée, mais que c'est l'ensemble de la structuration du marché international doit être repensé. Donc, les États ont intérêt aujourd'hui à investir en amont dans l'industrialisation et la transformation même semi-industrielle de ces produits, et qui peut permettre non seulement de créer de la richesse à l'interne, mais d'éviter ce que le Ghana et la Côte d'Ivoire ont connu. Donc il faut aller dans une approche d'abord interne d'industrialisation en termes de production de chocolat et d'autres produits associés à l'intérieur de la région, et deuxièmement, et de contribuer à avoir cette position de force dans les négociations de ces marchés et créer aussi les conditions par rapport à d'autres pays qui sont intéressés par la production de ne pas avoir ce système de monopole au niveau de l'achat. Donc c'est ce que je peux dire. Et le problème n'est pas seulement la Côte d'Ivoire et le Ghana, le problème doit être un problème régional de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, parce que ça joue sur l'économie régionale, compte tenu du fait aussi que la Côte d'Ivoire en difficulté ou le Ghana par rapport à cette production aussi contribue à baisser les revenus qui sont gérés par la CEDEAO pour assurer l'investissement dans différents pays. Alors, juste pour terminer, je vais revenir sur le tout en anglais. Je voudrais passer trois messages essentiels que je n'ai pas eu l'occasion de dire. Premier message, je l'ai déjà évoqué, les outils aujourd'hui de financement qui sont proposés ne sont pas du tout adaptés à l'accompagnement des exploitations agricoles familiales. Il faut qu'on soit conscient aujourd'hui qu'on ne peut pas financer la plantation d'un manguier et le lendemain demander à ce qu'on rembourse cet argent. Les gens payent l'argent parce qu'ils ont honte d'être humiliés dans le village. C'est tout. Sinon, ce n'est pas dessous la création de la richesse à l'intérieur de l'exploitation qui fait rembourser. Les systèmes de microfinance que nous avons aujourd'hui doivent être adaptés à ceci. Et donc, il y a dans la bonification des taux d'intérêt doit être une priorité. Ensuite, le financement public doit être la priorité aujourd'hui pour assurer un financement durable. Et donc, parce qu'on constate qu'en Afrique de l'Ouest, plus de 80%, je vous dis, des financements qui vont aujourd'hui dans l'agriculture vont dans l'achat des intrants chimiques. Donc c'est récurrent. Chaque année, il faut aller dans le même système. Ce n'est pas durable. Il y a des problèmes structurels qu'on a mentionnés ici qui ne sont pas pris en charge tout simplement parce que les modes de financement qui viennent très souvent du secteur privé ou d'autres types d'investissements ont un lien avec le marché des intrants chimiques dans la région. Donc ce n'est pas durable. Il faut changer de palier. Troisième message que je voulais aussi faire passer, c'est que les approches partenariats publics-privés aujourd'hui qui excluent les organisations paysannes sont préjudiciables à la durabilité du système qu'on est en train de discuter aujourd'hui. Il faut repenser ce système-là. On ajoute un quatrième P où je crois qu'on doit remettre en cause les pays qui sont en train d'élaborer des lois partenariat public-privé. C'est impensable de voir des lois.
Si tu peux traduire, merci.
Tu traduis, ça va aller plus vite. No, I was just to end up for the question that was raised by European Union. I said that this is not Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana problem. It's the whole region that should be interested in this, because what happened, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, when they decided just to pull out the prices on the international market, they succeeded because they have the highest rate. More than 60% of the global production of cocoa is from these two countries. So because of that, they succeeded to push the buyers to increase the price. That has been very contributive to small-scale producers in Cote d'Ivoire. But at the end of the day, there is a change because the fluctuation and the volatility of prices at international market push them to go back again. So it's a big loss for these two countries. So it should be first an internal action to create conditions for processing cocoa in the region, creating jobs also, but also adding value to this production. These are internal things. And secondly, to increase the capacity of negotiation of these two countries, but also the whole region, to impact on this international market, because they have the highest rate, and they should be in a position to fix the price of this commodity in the international market. And I just mentioned that I have three messages to share. The first one is that the funding system of family farming is not adapted to the sustainability of this, because there are so many things that I mentioned also that we need to change completely the banking system in these countries to allow family farming to be sustainable. Secondly, that public funding system should be the priority to ensure that there is a sustainability of the system. And thirdly, that the private partnership as the model that we have actually is not feasible for family farming system, because family farms are excluded from it. Secondly, that is just creating conditions for economic growth in the country, but the biggest share of the revenue will go out of the country. So these are things that we need really to incorporate in our processing, that laws on partnership, public partnership agreement should completely be reframed with a new paradigm on this sense.
Merci beaucoup, Mamadou. Kola, you have 2 or 3 questions, I don't remember, so if you can close.
Thank you all for the excellent questions. So on the question of how we select members, so basically, over the years, we've developed and refined a psychometric test that we've deployed now to over 200,000 members, that now we've fully digitized, where a field officer in the most remote locations can sit under a tree or next to somebody at a wedding and take them through the entire assessment process, all the way through to helping them build their mini farmer cooperative, doing the field assessments and managing the risks of understanding if their fields are appropriate for the crops that they want to do, literally all the way to the point where we actually disperse the loan, and able to do that all offline. On the questions, or I think there's some questions around insurance, and on the insurance side, I think it's and managing the risks of pest, disease, weather. This is an area that we've spent an extensive amount of time on, considering that we have tens of billions of dollars that we've put out at risk to smallholder farmers. So we actually developed Nigeria's first weather index insurance product in partnership with Swiss Re, and now taking that one step further to actually create a yield index insurance product. So it's a multi-peril risk insurance product, so that if it's drought, flood, pest, whatever that impacts yield within a tight geographic area, you can actually then farmers can get payouts on that. So I'm happy to chat with anybody about that offline. And then now we are innovating in a specific insurance product to a specific farmer and figuring out ways to manage the efficiency of that. On the issue of interest rates, one of the key things that we've done to keep interest rates very low, particularly because we're dealing with very low value products, we finance maize, which is very low margin product, is to ensure that we're able to make a margin not just from interest, but a margin on the input side and a margin on the actual sale of the commodity itself. So because we're able to make a margin across those 3 areas, while at the same time using the same person to deliver all 3 services, we're able to amortize the cost of that person and significantly reduce interest costs. On the long-term financing piece, the reality is that it's very difficult to do long-term financing for smallholder farmers. Our way that we've identified how to do that is by we take on the risk of the asset. So we've done this now with harvesting equipment. So today we run Nigeria's largest harvesting operation. We've invested in about 300 ton per hour of equipment to harvest, and then we lease that equipment on a pay-for-use basis to farmers. Same thing we've done on storage. We've invested millions of dollars in storage capacity, which we then lease to farmers on a pay-for-use basis. Finally, to touch on Mamadou's point, we completely agree that we need to rethink the way that we do agricultural lending on the continent. I believe we need to learn from the successful models of others, which hands down the most successful model today is the U.S. Farm Credit System that leverages the public debt markets to raise $200 billion a year to finance farmers through a dedicated network of agricultural lending institutions. So we are actually in the process right now of developing that network of grassroots level dedicated agricultural lending institutions that will then be able to, in good times and in bad times, lend to farmers. And because they're specialized lenders focused on specific commodities, not doing everything, just 1, 2, 3 commodities in a particular geography, they can utilize that expertise to manage the risk and ensure that clients are profitable.
Alors, sur la question de comment ils sélectent les membres, en fait, c'est tout un processus, c'est pas une intervention unique. Très souvent, ils travaillent, comme il vous l'a dit, dans le nord du Nigeria, donc avec des producteurs qui sont dans des zones très isolées, donc très souvent avec des outils offline, mais une combinaison aussi de en ligne. Ils les digitalisent, ils essayent d'avoir le maximum d'informations, y compris les appuyer à construire des coopératives. Voilà. Sur l'assurance, il y a eu plusieurs questions. Alors, de nouveau, il y a plusieurs interventions. Une, c'est essayer de voir comment réduire les risques. Alors, surtout avec des outils comme assurance pour le climat ou sur les sols, etc. Donc, ils ont plusieurs projets avec des grandes compagnies d'assurance comme Swiss Re et des produits innovants qui regardent à des finances très précises aussi sur des chaînes de valeur qui sont, comme il vous l'a dit, le maïs, qui sont plutôt faibles. Donc, ils essayent de voir comment ne pas dépendre, leur marge de gain ne dépendent pas uniquement du crédit, mais sur un ensemble d'interventions. Par exemple, l'équipement, l'achat d'input, de contribuer, ils le font de manière importante. Et après, ils louent, que ce soit la mécanisation ou d'autres choses, il le loue de nouveau au producteur sur une base d'utilisation, paiement uniquement par utilisation, chaque fois qu'il est utilisé, que c'est utilisé. Pour le financement de très long terme, c'est très difficile en fait pour des petits producteurs, pour l'appliquer aux petits producteurs. Ils pensent qu'un des systèmes les plus efficients qu'ils sont en train d'essayer de copier, ou en tout cas d'adapter, c'est celui du système de crédit aux États-Unis, système de crédit agricole, qui fait en fait qu'il est basé sur un très grand appui public qui en fait a des institutions qui sont vouées uniquement à des chaînes de valeur très spécifiques et des interventions très spécifiques dans ce cadre-là.
Merci Isolina. Annick, il n'y avait pas eu de questions spécifiques, mais tu n'as pas une autre intervention, tu ne voudrais pas rajouter quelque chose? Merci beaucoup. Bon, avant de repasser la parole au CTA, j'aimerais vous remercier d'abord pour tout le soutien que les organisations paysannes bénéficient au cours de cette semaine, mais au cours des dernières années de coopération. Je voudrais informer les participants que les organisations paysannes africaines ici présentes sont là pour toute la semaine, donc en collaboration dans le cadre d'un partenariat stratégique avec le CTA pour la capitalisation de cas réussis. Et donc, demain, c'est une journée, la matinée sera ouverte aux partenaires qui seront intéressés de prendre part à cet atelier. Les organisations, les leaders ici présents auront l'occasion de présenter leur cas de réussite. Et donc, s'il y a des partenaires qui sont intéressés à investir, à soutenir des cas, vous êtes les bienvenus. Donc, demain à 9h, à l'hôtel Marivaux. Donc c'est ouvert pour la matinée pour les partenaires. Voilà, je vous cède la parole. Merci beaucoup encore et bon appétit à tous.
Merci Fatima. Well, we had a very intense...
Sorry, I haven't translated it in English.
Oh.
Only very quickly, I'm sorry I forget to translate, so thanking CTA for the support, but I've announced that farmers organizations are here for all the week with the support of CTA to work on capitalization of successful cases. Tomorrow morning, it's open to partners, so it's going to be an open session. So partners who are interested to support, to invest into successful cases, you are welcome tomorrow from 9 at Hotel Marivaux. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatima. Well, I'll be very brief. We had a very intense morning with lots of important presentations and perspectives. I think we established very clearly the importance of smallholder agriculture in terms of meeting not only food and nutrition security, but also sustainability and the SDGs and so on. So I think it's very clear that if anyone has doubts, and it often happens that in policy, governments try to move from smallholder to large-scale farms, but they really have to understand that the basis of food production and sustainability are really smallholder farmers. So that was very clearly established, and of course we looked at the governance and the policy framework that exists at local and global levels, and whether they are effectively working to support smallholders. I think there were some very good lessons, a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that some of these policy frameworks are actually supporting smallholder producers. Of course, we had a lot of discussion around finance, credit, and so on. I think the challenge is, from the cases that we have heard, the big challenge is how do we scale up and reach out to the millions of smallholder producers that we have in Africa and other parts of the world. So this has been a very rich discussion with lots of lessons, and I hope that everyone has benefited and the morning has been worthwhile. So as usual, I like to again to thank our speakers, excellent speakers with, who have done a lot of preparation to make this very useful morning. The chairs, the two chairs, were very happy. Normally we ask ambassadors to chair these sessions, so it's quite a unique opportunity to have the leaders of farmers organizations actually chairing these sessions and sharing their perspective. So my thanks to Fatima and Ishmael for your excellent chairing this morning. Of course, the interpreters, they have left us now, but I'd like to thank them as well. And my CTA colleagues, Isolina, and the other colleagues who all work very hard to make this happen. And you could see that the interest continues to be there. We get a lot of people to come and attend this session. So I'd like to thank my colleagues as well. And finally, of course, to all of you, the participants, for taking the time to join us and actively engage in these discussions. So thank you very much, and I invite you to join us at the networking lunch. And the next briefing will be on the 23rd of October, and it will be around regional trade. As you know, this is a very hot topic now, and we'll have, I'm sure we'll have a very interesting briefing as well around this topic. So thank you, and Isolina can very briefly maybe just summarize.
Donc, le directeur du CTA remercie l'ensemble, bien sûr, des intervenants et des participants. Il a trouvé les présentations et les perspectives très variées, d'ailleurs très très intéressantes, et qui ont mis en exergue l'importance des petits producteurs et de l'agriculture familiale, non seulement en termes de sécurité alimentaire et nutrition, mais aussi de durabilité de l'agriculture et des objectifs du développement. Si quelqu'un dans la salle avait des doutes sur l'importance de la petite agriculture, il ne devrait plus l'avoir, mais nous sommes tous des alliés des producteurs. Ce qui importe, c'est que les gouvernements et les politiques qui souvent pensent que c'est plus facile de passer d'un système de petite agriculture à très grande agriculture comprennent en effet que la petite agriculture est aussi très résiliente et très efficace. Et ça, c'était le but, en tout cas, de cette session. Nous avons eu des présentations très intéressantes aussi en matière de politique sur la gouvernance, non seulement locale, mais avant tout globale, puisqu'elle détermine beaucoup des impacts locaux. Donc ça, c'est très très important de suivre comment les intérêts et la protection des petits producteurs s'inscrit dans cette gouvernance-là. Et un autre point qui est très important, nous avons pu avoir quelques petit résumé d'interventions positives, mais c'est toujours très limité, et c'est comment en faire d'autres et comment mettre à échelle et multiplier les succès pour des millions de petits producteurs qui en ont besoin. Alors, il remercie les excellents intervenants qui, bien évidemment, ont passé beaucoup de temps dans les préparations. Il remercie, vous savez que les briefings sont faits une demi-journée un peu pour aussi impliquer les politiques ici à Bruxelles. Donc, souvent, on a des modérateurs de session, des présidents de session qui sont des ambassadeurs. Ici, c'était des producteurs à juste titre. Alors, il remercie personnellement et au nom de vous tous Ishmael ainsi que Fatma, qui sont des leaders d'organisations paysannes. Il remercie les interprètes, il remercie l'ensemble du staff du CTA qui prépare les briefings et il voit que l'intérêt est toujours là par rapport à toute votre participation. Il vous remercie tous. On vous annonce que le prochain briefing sera le 23 octobre. Il portera sur les opportunités du commerce régional, comme on l'a vu aujourd'hui aussi. C'est très très important et c'est un moment très crucial, non seulement en Afrique mais au-delà. Et alors, on vous souhaite un très bon appétit et on vous remercie. Je suis désolée si j'ai fait des petites erreurs d'interprétation. Pardonnez-nous.